Hello and welcome to Super Lady Hero Hour. Hello, I am Yael Tygiel. I'm joined as always by the incredible KB. Hello, KB.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining our very special episode where we will be reviewing season one, aka the very first volume of the brand new Netflix series, Jupiter's Legacy. So, this is your official spoiler warning because we are going to spoil some things. It is premiere day and we have the opportunity to do so. We can speak freely, and boy, oh boy, are we going to speak freely. So, Yell, what is this show even about?
All right, so after nearly a century of keeping mankind safe, the world's first generation of superheroes must look to their children to continue the legacy. But tensions rise as the young superheroes, hungry to prove their worth, struggle to live up to their parents' legendary public reputations and exacting personal standards. Based on the graphic novels by Mark Miller and Frank Quietly, Jupiter's Legacy is an epic superhero drama that spans decades and navigates the complex dynamics of family, power, and loyalty. What did you think of this series? Because we are talking the whole series. So if you haven't seen
Whole
every
series,
episode,
top to bottom, every episode. So I actually enjoyed it. I think that it definitely, Yell is someone, as we know, because y'all watch the show, she wants things to happen immediately. This one, you have to be patient because it is not something that happens quickly. But because it spans decades, so we get to see 1929 and we get to see, well, what I assume is present day. They don't actually really confirm it, but present day versus 1929. I actually really liked 1929. Like, I was kind of digging the past a lot more and trying to uncover how these now superheroes obtain their powers. So it's an interesting dichotomy and dynamic because, we're seeing essentially these superheroes and their kids. And so we're basically seeing the superheroes though at the same age that their kids are now almost. So when we're in 1929, they're about the age that their kids are in present day, and we get to see kind of the choices they make. It is at the heart of things, though, a family drama, and I was not expecting that. Like, I feel like it is much more a family drama than it is a superhero show, because they are diving knee deep in the family drama between the lead characters, Sheldon and Walt. Sheldon, portrayed by Josh Duhamel, Walt, portrayed by Ben Daniels. Their brotherhood and the things that are happening with their father and how the sins of their father kind of inform how they are in present day. Also, though, I will say, like, mad kids just pop up randomly. You'd be like, whose kid is this? And they'll
yeah.
just be like, oh, it's this kid, it's this kid, it's this kid. And so I'm curious because one thing that is a theme is Sheldon is, married to Grace, and, they have two kids. Again, we told you I was going to spoil it. They have their two kids, and you know that. But the interesting thing is that every other kid is involved. You actually don't know who their mothers are. And so I was like, this is weird. Like, all of their fathers, but you don't know
Yes.
their mothers. And I'm like, why is this happening? So
Do you think that Grace is the mother of everyone?
I don't know, but it's interesting, right? So I don't think that Grace is the mother of everyone. She can't be, because what we end up finding out about Walt's daughter's Asian. So, like,
Right.
there's no way that Grace could,
Right.
be
But
her mother.
everyone else.
Well, I hope after what we saw between Hutch and Chloe that she is not
Not, yeah.
Hutch's mother. Uh, or we're gonna end up with a Game of Thrones situation. Um, Truly.
here's
So
here's what I thought. I was really into it in the first episode, like so down. Um, I like that this is a different kind of take on superheroes because it as you say, it is a family drama. I did like that we are learning about the generations. I am impatient and did not appreciate having to wait until the last episode to understand how they got their powers, who the bad guy was, what was actually going on. I don't like waiting that long, because the way that it felt as an ending was, we are setting up a cliffhanger, so there has to be a second season. And I don't like feeling forced. I'm okay with, I mean, I want a second season. I just don't like it being forced upon me.
So you know what, going in, I will say, because it said volume 1 and me thinking about the Netflix formula, I already knew there would be a volume 2. Like, you know, just kind of thinking about how Netflix does things. And honestly, my assumption is that they shot all of it as one continuous story and then they broke it out into 2 volumes is kind of what I'm thinking. But I agree, it really is not. And I mean, so the 7th episode develops some things, but it's really not until the last 10 minutes of the 8th episode where you are truly like, oh, okay, I'm invested. Like things shift dramatically. And to Yael's point, like, you know, we finally get to figure out who the real bad guy is now. I'll say I had an inkling, but I wasn't 100% sure. Right. I will say that, you know, as we're moving about through the story and they're constantly talking about George's betrayal and Skyfox this, because George is also Skyfox, George is this, Skyfox this, blah, blah, blah. I felt like that couldn't be true, if you know what I mean. Like, right. Yes, a betrayal could have happened, but they were putting so much weight on it that I was just kind of like, he can't actually be the big bad. There's way too much weight on this. And spoiler alert, he's not. So like, I mean, he may be a bad person, right, but he's not necessarily the big bad orchestrating all of the things that we do see in season 1.
Sorry, yeah. I just don't like that we get to the 8th episode and we haven't seen George and we haven't seen that other dude, the guy who they picked up on the trip and we're like, yup, he has to join us.
So it's interesting to me, and this is something that is not inherently clear in the show. So, you know, in the show, starting off, honestly, just like a regular family drama in terms of what's happening with Sheldon and Walt and their father. Yeah. We're starting off with what's happening with them and how in 1929, everyone knows Wall Street crashes, stock market crashes, then we have the Great Depression. So like as a result of the Great Depression, things shift dramatically for them as businessmen. Mm-hmm. And so it's not only personal tragedy, but it's also professional tragedy. And so, you know, from there, Sheldon kind of has a mental breakdown, which all makes sense to me. Like all of it, I'm like, okay, I'm invested, let's go. You know, George also struggling kind of with the absence of his parents, which we find out he's an orphan. And so like, you know, kind of navigating that, but also having his own professional losses that he's not, which wasn't very clear to me. Like, did he lose everything in the stock market? I'm not sure, you know, mm-hmm. Like who knows? But then it shifts a little bit and there's like a mysticism element that we don't actually ever get to. Mm-hmm. So Sheldon has these dreams and I'm invested like, okay, cool. And, you know, he's seeing these visions and you're like, oh, okay, great. But I'm still unclear why. Like, why Sheldon? How did he become Sheldon? You know, Sheldon, to your point, that gentleman who we never see again, that's a superhero. But, well, I shouldn't say that. We don't see him in the present. We only see him in the past.
Right.
What happened to him? And also, why was he in Sheldon's dream? Like, you literally don't know him. It made sense for everyone else because he eventually, you know, but Sheldon, this man is truly a stranger. So how? Yeah. So I'd say that's where it lagged for me in the writing, where I was like, wait, what?
I agree with you. I think that once they're like on the quest and realize we're on a quest and like this is a challenge and here is the challenge and this is what we have to do. Like once they figure that out, I'm like, cool. And then they get to the reveal and they're like, you are worthy. Okay. How did you find us? Why? What made you pick me? What makes me the one that you tested? Because what we saw was, you know, the random guy was on a different quest that fell apart. And then the guy from that 70s show also had the visions. I'm so sorry for that actor whose name I don't know. The one that lived in the house, like he also had the visions and was supposed to be on this quest and didn't go. So like how many people were chosen and why? What did they all have in common? Are they all type A blood? Like, what is it? You know, I just want to understand. Yes.
So I think I might have just had a revelation. We're doing a lot of things with time in this show, right? I actually think that the man in the house is the man from the island. I think they're the same person.
Oh.
I think maybe he talks it like, I feel like we're manipulating time, and maybe that's an older version of him, because remember they said the exact same thing, and remember he kept saying that man told me the exact same thing. Maybe in some sort of, because there's always like alternate universes and people and things, maybe that's him from a different timeline, and young Sheldon talks to him. I was like, maybe that's it, because remember, it's where Sheldon goes to that house and sees them all at the table. I'm like, maybe that's a version of him. Like, it just hit me that maybe that could be a version of him.
That's interesting. I think you're totally right. I think one of the things Westworld has taught us is that shows will tell you the story in out of order so that you don't know that it's the story. Yes. That's very interesting. I like this. I like that idea. I'm
like, and he ends up being the one to help. You know what I mean? Like, maybe inadvertently, because remember he also takes his own life then. Right. But maybe that's, like, he's the one that kind of helps Sheldon realize, like, oh, we have to go on this journey based on what he said, but he's really from the future.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would be so awesome.
That's what I'm saying, is there's all of this in volume 1 and very few answers until the last episode, and it requires them to make a volume 2. And I think that my hesitation of being forced to have a second season is that I am used to network TV, where sometimes at the end of season 1 it's canceled and you never get the answers. So I'm not saying don't give us a cliffhanger. I'm saying don't make it all a cliffhanger.
Yeah. And so I will say some things that fell short for me. Even though I just said I really actually would enjoy the idea of him being from the future. Time is super hard to understand in the show, because if we're going by the standards that this is present day and they were like in their 20s in 1929, then they're like 90 years old. Like,
yes, I think they're supposed to be,
but their kids are 20. So this is what I'm getting at. Like, their kids, they said, were in their 20s. So I'm like, not you being in your late 60s, early 70s when you have these kids. Like, what? I'm just like, wait a minute, what's happened here? Or are these kids genetically modified, like, which is a thought that I had, because the parents would have been so old? Or is it just that the parents didn't start aging until a certain point? Like, I just have so many questions about that timeline and the ages, because I'm like, okay, so if you guys had these kids in your 70s, like, wait, what? But also, what?
I think that we can assume everyone has slower aging, and so it makes sense that the parents aged slower, obviously, since they are old and still very capable of being heroes. I think it's totally reasonable that they had the kids super late, or that the kids are aging slowly as well. And so they've like done the math, and let's say they should be 40, but they are 20 or something. I don't know.
That was hard for me.
Yeah.
I will say too, something that I don't know that I like, but I feel like I don't. But I'm not sure. Hutch and Chloe being an item. I feel like, the brunt of this season is really addressing Chloe's addiction. And how that really puts her addiction really puts her in a lot of unsafe spaces. And we see that play out. And, people take advantage of her. She doesn't always make the best choices because of that and some of the scenarios that she's in. And so it's like a delicate dance, I think they do, a fine line between her being a superhero, well, being super powered, I should say, because she, is not really stepping into the hero role. Navigating the dynamics and the family trauma that she has, which I feel like has been passed down from generation to generation. Started with, Sheldon seeing his father, and then, kind of manifested in this way because Sheldon doesn't know how to show affection and love and in the way that is necessary for these kids. But Hutch is, and I'm not saying Hutch is a bad guy, because really Hutch is kind of the least fleshed out character for me. And so I
Yeah.
definitely need more in season 2 because I barely know anything about him. But Hutch and Chloe just seem like a bad idea because they both need to manage their issues. Like, and I guess that's why they're being pulled together, is the fact that
Right.
they're both messy, and things are unclear. But I'm like, is now the time for y'all to, I just don't think so.
I really like both of these characters. And I usually don't like a character that is messy. But I do like Chloe. But I think Hutch is super interesting because we know that he doesn't have powers, but he does have this thing that only works for him. And I want more on that. Who built that? Where did that come from?
I feel
How
like
does
his
that
dad
work?
did. I
Right.
feel like his dad did. Yeah.
I want all the details on that. I could be okay with them like teaming up, either doing good or bad, because that was cool, but I do not like them doing each other. That was not for me.
Yeah. I'm just like, and also I should note, I also don't think Grace is Hutch's mom because he's black. So there's also that. So I mean,
Obviously.
like, so it's like, okay. But I just feel like, which
I
I
obviously
meant to
wasn't
say earlier.
I wasn't
Well, I mean,
serious
no,
that
but it
Grace
actually
was the
would have
mom.
been, I think it actually would have been a good, like, it would have been odd, but I think it would have been an interesting concept if they were trying to make a pure superhero, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
bloodline, essentially. Because not saying that these mothers are superpowered, but I feel like most of their mothers are humans, at least, and maybe if not most of them, then definitely Hutch, and maybe
Yep.
that's why he has the
Right.
but yeah, I just, them having sex, and then it was also kind of just like, so I was like, unless they cut something, it was very like, oh, now they're sleeping together, and I was like, oh,
Right.
really?
Yeah,
So maybe
I
they cut a scene.
also would like more information about the blue powder she snorted.
Yes.
Because it seemed like it wasn't supposed to be drugs.
Right. That's what I thought.
I was like,
And
who just starts snorting shit without knowing
anything.
what it is?
I was like, I don't think this is a good idea, girl. And it ended up not being a good idea because then she was hospitalized. So
But I
I
was
was
like,
like,
this is blue glitter. Blue glitter can't get you high.
well, apparently that could, but
Yeah,
also it could kill you. So
right,
it just was kind of like, oh no. And probably the only reason why she didn't die, obviously, is because she's super powered.
right.
So, I mean, I was just like, man, oh man. But also, Hutch knew that she would do it. So he set her up. Like, there's just a lot of complexities, but she also has been following him. So
Mm.
it's just like, neither one of you actually trust each other. So, what is the benefit of being in this intimate relationship
Yeah, it's
when it's
odd.
clear that you guys are not? So, I'm curious about that. I will say something that I am going to predict for volume 2. I'm just going to skip ahead just a little. Is Brandon and Petra. I feel like, when we meet Brandon, he has another girlfriend, another superhero, and they end things. And then, his mom's like, are you back together? And he's like, maybe, I don't know. But I keep seeing, it seems very clear to me that they're going to move in the direction of Brandon and Petra, that they kind of have kind of like an unspoken respect for each other that will turn romantic. Like, I feel like that's obvious to me. So,
Yeah. I want to talk about the code. Because that seems to be such a like thing of the season. What is, what's right and what is, is the code still useful? Is the code even usable when the villains do not have the same code? I think it's a very interesting question. I think that is a really great part of the show, is this whole discussion of it. I love that Sheldon, his therapist, is in jail. I think that's so funny.
In Supermax.
Yeah. So I think that's a very clever and fun twist. But this code thing is interesting. What did you think about it?
I think Sheldon learns a lot over the course of this season. I think he sets out with good intentions. I actually think Sheldon is a good person in the sense that these superhero shows that we've been watching a lot lately do not have kind of that same code or honor or value.
Right.
And Sheldon really stands out in that way. He is genuinely always trying to do the right thing. And that's admirable. But he doesn't account for other people's responses.
Mhm.
And the thing that you can't control in life, in real life, and on this TV show is how someone is going to respond. And so, Sheldon tries to manipulate scenarios to fit into the structure of this code because he feels like without it, he doesn't know who he'll become. And it's interesting because it's almost like his own personal safeguard, which is great because I think he understands giving human beings superpowers without boundaries can be exceptionally dangerous. I mean, you don't know what they'll do in the world and how they may view themselves as better than everyone else. But when your kid's about to die and you're like, nah, we don't kill. Well, what? Like, it's just kind of like, okay, what? And then when your kid toes the line, he crosses that boundary and he breaks the code, you're unforgiving. But he saved your life. So it's really just kind of like, at what point do you reconcile? And that is essentially the biggest issue between Brandon and Sheldon this entire season. They're on opposite sides. And I think that's another reason why Brandon will be drawn to Petra is because she's making her own informed decisions. And her relationship with her father, with Fitz, is so different from the relationship between Brandon and Sheldon. I think he admires that because Fitz allows Petra the room to make mistakes. He allows Petra the room to ask questions. He doesn't judge her. And he's so appreciative to Brandon for saving her life. He understands that like a code is to be broken, essentially, in some scenarios. He doesn't think it's like that all the time. But I also think that like Sheldon is on an island by himself. He's an island of one. Because literally there's no one on the team by episode 8 who believes in this code except for Sheldon. And even at the end of episode 8, he's questioning it because it's causing such a rift between him and his family. Now he's really starting to be like, I don't know. But even Grace is like, my guy, this don't make sense. Like our kids almost died. You almost died. I almost died. At some point, we got to pull it together. So it's an interesting theme that they put out there. But Sheldon gonna have to loosen that belt buckle a bit because
I really enjoyed that conversation. And I think that it's interesting, especially on a superhero show, because we do have, unlike the Flash and all these other shows, they're like, we're not gonna kill people, we're gonna arrest them. But they're kind of more goofy. Whereas like this show, it's like death is serious, which I think is really interesting. I also really am interested in the union. I'd like to understand this application process and like what that's like. I would, me in superhero schools, I'm like, tell me more about this organization.
Well, we saw how Chloe had herself a little club boothing. What was his name? Because I thought it was genius and she hated it, but I was like, dang, I really love this. Nick of Time. That's what it was. I was like, darn it, that's actually a really clever name. And you saw how like, Nick of Time seeks her out in the club. They have a little quick romance. And then he's like, so can you help me get into the union? And she punches him straight through the city. I mean, it was like an Omni-Man punch, in my opinion.
Oh, I loved
him
that.
Through, and I said, girl, honestly, because he definitely tried to play you. And so yeah, I am curious about the process of the union, but also who's in the union right now, because it seems like it's just their parents. And it's kind of like,
but there were the girls at the club that were like, I just got in, and I'm like, tell me
they're
more.
The new blood, but I'm saying who runs the union is still just their parents. And so if it were me, like Chloe, I would be like, I want to be a part of this because it's literally the same thing I've had to deal with my entire life. I would want to do something new, hence why Petra was like, I'm thinking of getting out of the union and starting my own, which seems like a very interesting direction for season 2, because the parents will probably still be in the union and the youth will have started their own thing. And it's like, ooh, that could be really interesting.
I'm super into that. I'm fascinated by the story of, the union. I'm fascinated. Chloe's story is so interesting because it totally makes sense that one kid would follow in the footsteps and try to be the golden boy and try to do everything right. And the other kid is like doing the opposite. I'm out. I think that totally makes sense. And I'm here for it. I want more of that. But I want my answers earlier.
And I want to see Hutch in present day. Well, George, Skybox.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I call them both Hutch because that's their last name. But I want to see George as Skyfox or just
Right.
himself as an old man in present day because we're not getting that. I want to see these mamas. That's what I want to see because I'm like, it's so weird that we are not seeing anyone's mothers. Why? And also, now that I think about it, we also didn't see Sheldon and Walt's mama. Like what where we don't see mothers, and I don't know why. The only one we see is Grace, and
Yeah.
I'm like curious. I need more of that. But listen, I enjoyed the show. I think that it set good groundwork for more to come, and I'm curious about what's ahead. I do think that if you are impatient, it is very hard to watch because, if you just want things now and immediate, probably not gonna be
Thanks.
for you. You gotta stick with it. Um, and I don't necessarily think that the time jumps are going to work for everyone. I enjoyed it because I liked the layers of the different storylines kind of weaving together in both. But the past is still my favorite. And now that we're kind of done with the past, maybe we won't even need to do that kind of woven thing and we can just move to the future
I
or
don't know.
the
I think
present.
I think we're not done with the past. I mean, we have them. They got their powers and they decided to do the thing. But like between then and now, we need to see the breakup. We need to see what. First of all, we need to see what they can do. We don't know what all of their powers are. That's also, again, I'm very impatient. Well, it sounds like we are ready to rate it here on Super Lady Hero Hour. We rate everything on a scale from poop to kittens. So, what do you rate Volume 1 of Jupiter's Legacy?
It's a kitten for me. Like, I know that's not going to be everyone's case. But I'm just thinking overall, not every episode was a kitten. Some episodes were spoons. There's probably one that I find would probably be a poop for me. But overall, I'm averaging full season. It's going to be a kitten for me because I had a good time. But I also think I was looking at it from the lens of this is a family drama that happens to have powered people. And so that element is always super intriguing to me. Again, I don't 100% agree with all the writing. I was confused at some parts and was like, wait, what's happening? And the writers definitely waited till the very last moment to give us what we were asking the whole time.
Yep.
But once they got to the island, things actually kind of picked up fairly quickly and the pace of the show changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then they introduced a character that I was really interested in, i.e., Walt's daughter.
Right.
Super, super. She's the most interesting character.
Yep.
So technically, I feel like in volume 2, we have to go back to the past because I have to see more of her. But yeah. Overall, it's a kitten for me. So how are you feeling? How are you rating it?
So I agree with you. I'm also going to give it a kitten. There were some episodes that were a spoon for me. I'm impatient. That in and of itself, waiting till the 8th episode to reveal so much is a poop. But overall, I enjoyed this. I'm here for it. I will obviously watch the Forced Upon Me Volume 2 once the show is announced to be renewed. We assume that it will be. If not, I will be very angry. And and maybe I will check out the comics. Maybe I'll check out the graphic novels that it's based on. That's how much of a kitten. I really enjoyed it. It didn't stick with me the way that like when you finish binging a series, you're thinking about it all the time. It didn't stick with me the same way, but over the course of a few weeks, I feel like it has started seeping into my brain more. And I'm like, I wonder more about that. So yeah, definitely a kitten. Any predictions for volume 2?
Like I said, volume 2, let's find out more about Hutch. We will see George, aka his father, aka Skyfox again. I feel like, hopefully Walt's daughter will make an appearance again. We will find these mothers and we will see them and have their stories be more integral. That is what I want. I actually really, really enjoy the dynamic between Fitz and Petra a lot because it is probably the most healthy parental child relationship on the show, actually.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing to see from the Black superheroes. So I want to see more of that and have their storyline fleshed out. Obviously there is a member missing, and I want to talk more about that and figure out where he is in the present, or if that was him, like I assumed it was from the future, and now he's gone. But I still just need to know a bit more about what they did when they got their powers. So what would really be intriguing to me is if we're going to do 2 time periods again, we can stick in the present, but maybe let's move to like the 1950s, you know, like let's bring in a new decade. I think
Yeah.
that that would be super intriguing and kind of see how they navigate a lot of different things. But hopefully, I hope there's just more grace and understanding, because it's so interesting to me just watching this show. And oftentimes, honestly, in real life, you know, children are constantly seeing their parents as much more than what they are. And something hits, you know, when you hit your 30s, you become acutely aware that your parents are just human beings. Like, truly, and for me, I'll say it's flipped, and now I've started to raise my parents. Like they've somehow aged dramatically without even trying, and now I'm like making decisions for them. Like, you need to make better choices. You know, I'm like telling them all the time. So you start to see that shift, and I hope we get there in that show, because you know, like I feel like right now, Chloe and Brandon and Hutch even, they're still making choices based on their parents in some sort of way. Yeah. And it's not necessarily always their parents' approval, but they're always constantly thinking of that.
Yeah.
And there comes a shift the older you get in life where you're like, listen, I'm making these choices because this is what I want to do. And then your parents start to just respect that. I'm like hoping that shift occurs, because if not, right, like Chloe won't survive. Like, she's really turning to addiction because she's not managing this, and she needs to go to therapy, even if it's and Supermax. Get a Supermax therapist too. She needs like a therapist to navigate that. And Brandon won't last either, because he's going to be filled with resentment, right? So I'm hoping in volume 2 we kind of address that. But any predictions for you for volume 2?
I predict we're going to continue to have 2 timelines. I like your idea of like doing the 50s. I think that's super interesting. I predict that whatever mystery they let us have in the volume 2 does not get resolved to the end of volume 2, because they really like to drag things out. I just, there are so many questions I want answers to. I want to understand, because we know how the 6 got their powers. Did everyone on the boat also get powers?
So we did see you remember that when you saw like
the pulse,
and then I was like, I was curious about that too. Like, did they? But then also, how are kids made? How are these other superheroes made?
Right. I'm wondering, I want to understand how we went from 6 people got powers to there are powered people. Because that's super interesting, and I love it. So I want that answer. I want to understand where the breakup in the team happened. I want to understand, I would like more of Walt's daughter. I want more of that, because I also want to know who has what power, because that's interesting, you know? So that's what I want for volume 2. Now we got to talk about the performer of the season. There were not many women to choose from.
There weren't, but I think the women that were in it did well with what they were given, right? I think that Chloe's arc is the most intriguing. Just because there's so many layers to that. But I think when Walt's daughter, when she came on the scene, I was immediately intrigued. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, 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 yes. And I think that the actress that portrayed her was so fabulous. And there's so many layers with that, right? Because she got a lot of daddy issues too. Walt clearly is not a good father at all. And aside from murder, but even before then, he wasn't a good father. And just their dynamic and how she plays off of that. So this is really hard for me. And I think Leslie Bibb does a really good job too, as Grace and her arc. So really, I just feel like we gonna have to shout out all 3 ladies.
I'm gonna give it to Elena, because it was such an amazing performance the whole season. Had we seen Reiku more of the season, I would have been all about it, because she's in 1 episode and is so great. Was it 2 episodes?
She's in 2.
It's one final storyline. She's really great. She's so good. I wish we would have gotten more of her. Leslie Bibb, I feel like, was underutilized. If you've seen her reactions to Sam Rockwell winning awards, you can see how expressive this woman can be. And this character did not utilize her talents.
She's so talented and she's so amazing. She has like this crazy energy. But yes, I think she, again, like I said, did well. The women did well with what they were given.
Right.
She wasn't given as much, but it also makes me feel like I wonder what was cut. Like I
Mm.
kept saying that all the time because I wanted to see more of her interaction with Chloe. I thought that that was really intriguing because Chloe has kind of a freedom that her mother is now seeking,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll see that in volume 2. But you're right, Leslie, super talented.
Let's talk about character style icon.
Woo! This is super hard because it's for the full season. So I'll say I really liked Leslie's attire in the 1920s.
Mm.
So I liked all of that in the 1920s. I think that like they gave her some really fun costumes. And also, I'm also going to shout out George, aka Sky Fox. George's attire in the 1920s, bomb. I was
Yeah.
like, yes, Matt, the actor who plays him. I was like, oh yes, these suits and these like his wardrobe in the 1920s was everything.
Mm-hmm.
But so I liked that from the 1920s. When it comes to present day, I think I was really kind of digging Chloe's vibe, but it was mostly because she was giving me like couture model, like, like
Yes. Yep.
vibes. So
Yeah. I really liked Reiku's outfits because like she looked like a superhero. And like a badass assassin superhero. So I really enjoyed that. But I agree, Chloe was, it felt like a, you know, influencer model style. And you see it, you know exactly who this girl is. And I loved that.
the wigs were not it.
No, what's,
Please let's talk about these wigs because Chloe's wig was sending me the whole time. It was distracting.
I didn't get it.
I was like, okay, girl, now no.
Like, why didn't they
that
dye
wig,
and cut her hair?
a mess. Sheldon's wig, a mess. When he's the utopian and the older, I said, now y'all, like we need better wigs in volume 2, or something because the wigs were not it for me.
All right. Well, what is your WTF or OMG moment?
Definitely going to be when Walt killed Riku.
Mm.
That's definitely, yeah. I didn't see that coming. I definitely didn't see them seeing eye to eye, but I felt like he could have trusted her. I felt like when she said, "Oh, you don't have to worry about me, just pay me." That's exactly what she meant. Like she hasn't been a problem before.
Right.
You know how you guys operate and the terms that you operate on, and that is not healthy for a father-daughter relationship, but it's what you guys have chosen and said works for the two of you. I did not think it was necessary at all for him to kill her. And that was totally shocking to me. I was actually completely surprised that he killed her because I thought, what? Just let her walk away. But also, why are all of these fathers in these superhero shows killing their kids or on the verge of killing them? Like, y'all are sending me. So that is it. And then honorable mention actually goes to when Brandon killed Black Star, or the copy, now that we found out is the copied version.
Right.
That was gruesome when he like just pounded into his head. I was like, oh, okay. What about you? OMG, WTF?
I agree. When Walt killed Reiku, I was like, wow. Especially because we just met her and I loved her. And I was like, no. So that was it. I think also the moment where they got their powers, and they're like, you are chosen. And then it like cuts away. And I was like, that's it. That's what we get.
And then they're like floating above.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. They've been chosen by who? That's actually the question I want in volume 2. But also, how y'all get these costumes so quick? Like literally they were hovering over them in costumes and I was like,
yeah, and the name specifically, because I don't foresee Sheldon being like, I'm the utopian. It feels like they were like bestowed upon them, and I just wanted
to know
who?
By right. Like an alien?
All amazing questions we hope to see in volume 2. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Jupiter's Legacy. Also, who your performer of the week of the season is, your style icon, and your OMG or WTF moment. We would love to hear all of that. We will be back on Wednesday for our regular show. But until then, KB, where are you? Where can everyone keep up with you?
Per usual, Social media, Twitter and Instagram only, The Lady KB, TheLadyKayB. Go there for all updates. I post interviews. I post things from Super Lady Hero Hour on there. There's some fun interviews from the Color Grade podcast. I mean, you can check out everything there. And so, Yael, until we meet again on Wednesday for our usual review show, where can everyone find you?
I am everywhere at Yael Tygiel. That is YAELTYGIEL. I have the SVU show on Sundays. I'm on Twitch on Mondays and Wednesdays. And I'm here on Wednesdays talking Super Lady Hero Hour. Yeah, check out also KB's interviews with the cast of Jupiter's Legacy.
Yes, yeah, please do on comicsbeat.com. Yeah, chatting with everyone. I wish they would have let me spoil for season 2. But we got some fun things around season 1, so check those out as well. But be sure to check those out. Only one, after you've watched the series. 2, watched our review, which is spoilery, and then watch the interviews because they are also spoilery. So you
Perfect.
probably want to do it in that order.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.